I don't know how it started, but I do know this. It ended with me burying a pocket watch in the backyard under a full moon, whispering words I didn't understand. That's where we begin. Not at the beginning, because beginnings are too clean, too safe. We start here, with dirt caked under my fingernails and sweat dripping down my face as I try to convince myself that whatever was inside that watch wasn't alive. It all began 3 weeks ago, when my grandmother passed away. She left me her house, a sprawling Victorian thing perched on the edge of town, like an old woman leaning over a cliff. It smelled of cedar wood and mothballs, but there was something comforting about its creaky floors and dusty bookshelves. Something familiar, like it had been waiting for me. In the attic, I found a small wooden box tucked beneath a pile of yellowed quilts. Inside was a silver pocket watch, ornate and heavy, with intricate engravings spiraling across its surface. When I opened it, the hands weren't moving. No ticking sound, just silence. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. At first, nothing strange happened. Life went on. Work emails, grocery runs, late-night binges of bad TV shows. But then came the whispers. Soft, faint, almost imperceptible. At first, I thought they were coming from outside. Neighbors arguing, wind rustling through trees. But one night, lying in bed, I realized they weren't coming from anywhere. They were coming from inside. They called my name. Evelyn. They said, so softly it could have been the hum of electricity or the settling of old wood. Evelyn. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked around the dark room. Nothing moved. The house was silent except for the faint groan of beams shifting in the cold. Still, I couldn't sleep after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched, as if the walls themselves were leaning closer, listening. The next morning, I examined the watch again. Its engravings seemed darker now, almost black against the tarnished silver. Running my fingers over them, I noticed something new. Tiny symbols etched into the spaces between the spirals. Symbols I didn't recognize. Ancient ones, maybe, or made-up nonsense designed to look important. Either way, they gave me goosebumps. And then, the dreams started. They weren't normal dreams. They felt real, so vivid I could taste the air, feel the texture of objects in my hands. Always the same place. A forest shrouded in mist, trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at the sky. In the center stood a figure cloaked in shadow, holding out a hand toward me. Behind them, a faint glow pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. Every time, I woke before reaching them, gasping, drenched in sweat, clutching the watch even though I hadn't meant to take it to bed. By the third night, I decided to get rid of it. I drove to the river outside town, intending to throw it in. But as I stood there, staring at the water, I froze. My arm wouldn't move. My fingers tightened around the watch as if it were pulling me back. The whispers returned, louder this time, overlapping voices speaking in languages I didn't understand. One voice rose above the rest, clear and commanding. You'll regret it. I dropped the watch and ran home. That's when things got worse. People started noticing changes in me. My best friend, Claire, asked why I looked so tired. You've got these hollows under your eyes, she said, tilting her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. And your voice, it sounded different, deeper somehow. Different? How could I be different? I was still me, wasn't I? But then I caught glimpses of myself in mirrors, at odd angles, out of focus, and something fell off. My reflection would lag behind my movements, just slightly. A blink delayed by half a second. A smile that lingered too long after mine faded. Once, I swore I saw someone else standing behind me, their face obscured by shadows. When I turned, no one was there, and the whispers grew louder. Constant now, buzzing in my ears like static. They spoke in fragments, disjointed phrases that made no sense until suddenly, horrifyingly, they did. You're not Evelyn. What? I whispered aloud, sitting bolt upright in bed. What do you mean? She's gone. The voices replied, calm and matter of fact. She gave herself to us. Panic surged through me. Who was us? What had Evelyn done? And most terrifying of all, if I wasn't Evelyn, then who was I? Desperate for answers, I returned to the attic. Maybe there was something else in that box. Something that explained what was happening to me. But when I opened it, the box was empty. Completely empty. Except for one thing scrawled across the bottom in shaky handwriting. Don't let it stop. Stop what? Stop the whispers? Stop the dreams? Stop being whoever, or whatever, I'd become? That's when I noticed the clock on the wall. It wasn't working either. Dead batteries, I assumed. But as I stared at it, the hands began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, spinning wildly until they stopped at midnight. The exact time I'd buried the watch. Midnight. The hands of the clock froze, pointing straight up like accusing fingers. My breath hitched as I realized something else. The air in the attic had changed. It wasn't just cold. It felt dense like walking through water. And the whispers? They weren't in my ears anymore. They were everywhere. In the walls, the floorboards, the very fabric of the house itself. Evelyn. They hissed again, louder now, overlapping voices rising into a crescendo. You promised. I stumbled backward, clutching the edge of the wooden box for support. Promise what? I hadn't promised anything. But deep down, beneath layers of denial and terror, I knew that wasn't true. Something inside me, a fragment of memory, or maybe instinct, knew exactly what the voices meant. That's when I saw her. In the corner of the attic, where no light reached, stood a figure. Small, slight, unmistakably female. She wore an old-fashioned dress, faded gray with lace trim, and her hair hung loose around her shoulders. Her back was to me, but I could feel her presence radiating outward, filling the room with an oppressive weight. She's here, the voices whispered, almost gleefully. She's come to take it back. Take what back? The watch? My sanity? Me? The figure turned slowly, deliberately, until she faced me. Her face, it wasn't human. Not entirely. Her skin shimmered faintly, translucent like frosted glass. And her eyes, oh God, her eyes. They were hollow voids, black pits that seemed to stretch infinitely inward. I couldn't look away. You shouldn't have buried it, she said, her voice soft but layered, as if multiple people spoke through her at once. It doesn't belong to you. I don't even know what it is. I shouted, my voice cracking under the strain. What do you want from me? Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach those empty eyes. To finish what you started. Before I could respond, the world tilted sideways. The attic dissolved into darkness, and I found myself standing in the forest for my dreams. Except this time, I wasn't alone. The cloaked figure waited ahead, holding out their hand, just as before. But now I could see them clearly, or rather, I could see through them. Their form flickered, translucent and shifting, like heat waves rippling over asphalt. Come closer, they beckoned, their voice low and resonant, echoing in the stillness. It's time. Time for what? My legs moved forward without my permission, each step heavier than the last. As I approached, the pulsing glow behind them grew brighter, illuminating the space between us. That's when I saw it. A mirror, standing upright in the middle of the clearing. Its surface shimmered unnaturally, reflecting not the forest, but something else entirely. A swirling vortex of shadows and light. The cloaked figure stepped aside, gesturing for me to stand in front of the mirror. Against every screaming instinct in my body, I obeyed. What choice did I have? The whispers pressed against my mind, urging me forward, drowning out any thought of resistance. When I looked into the mirror, I didn't see myself. Instead, I saw Evelyn. She looked exactly like me, or rather, how I used to look before all this began. Same face, same hair, same tired expression etched into her features. But there was something wrong with her. Something off. Her movements were slightly delayed, as if she were mimicking me from a great distance. When I raised my hand, she mirrored the motion, but only after a beat too long. When I blinked, she kept staring, unblinking, until finally closing her eyes seconds later. And then she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was predatory, triumphant, like she'd won some invisible battle I didn't even realize we were fighting. You let them trick you, she said, her voice eerily calm. They always do. Who? I demanded, though part of me already knew the answer. Who are they? Her reflection leaned closer, pressing its palms against the glass. The ones who gave you the watch. The ones who made you bury it. The ones who will never stop until you give them what they want. My stomach churned. And what is that? Her smile widened. revealing teeth far sharper than they should be. A vessel. Everything clicked into place, then horrifyingly clear. The whispers, the dreams, the feeling of being watched. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't madness. It was real. Something, or someone, had been using me. Using my body, my mind, my soul. And now they wanted more. They chose well. Evelyn continued, her voice dripping with mockery. You're perfect. Strong enough to survive the transition. Weak enough to break when needed. Transition? Break? What is she talking about? As if reading my thoughts, she tilted her head, studying me like a scientist examining a lab rat. You think you're Evelyn, don't you? Poor thing. You've been playing pretend for so long. You actually believed it. My knees buckled. I collapsed onto the forest floor, staring at her in disbelief. If I'm not Evelyn, then who am I? Her laughter echoed through the clearing, sharp and cruel. You're no one. A shadow cast by her light. A copy left behind when she gave herself to them. Gave herself to them. What did that mean? Was Evelyn dead? Trapped? Had she willingly sacrificed herself? Or had she been taken? The questions swirled in my mind, dizzying and endless. But one thing became painfully obvious. I wasn't safe. None of this was over. Whatever force had claimed Evelyn wasn't done with me yet. The cloaked figure reappeared beside the mirror, placing a hand on its frame. It's time, they repeated, their voice firm and unyielding. Step through. No. I scrambled backward, shaking my head violently. I won't. I don't belong there. Their hood shifted slightly, revealing glowing white eyes devoid of pupils. You already do. And then the mirror pulsed, sending a wave of energy rippling outward. Before I could react, the ground beneath me gave way, plunging me into darkness. I woke up gasping, my body jolting upright like I'd been yanked from the depths of a nightmare. Except this wasn't waking up. Not really. The room around me was wrong. Too dim, too distorted. The walls stretched impossibly high, curving inward like the inside of a seashell. Shadows pooled in the corners, writhing and shifting as if alive. And the air, it tasted metallic, sharp against my tongue like blood. The whispers were louder here, deafening almost. They weren't just voices anymore. They were sensations, crawling across my skin, burrowing into my thoughts. Words that shouldn't exist pressed themselves into my mind, forcing me to understand their meaning without ever hearing them aloud. You're home, one voice said, closer than the others. It sounded almost kind, but kindness from these creatures felt worse than cruelty. It meant they wanted something. Where am I? I whispered, though speaking felt unnatural, like trying to form words underwater. My voice came out thin, fragile, swallowed by the oppressive weight of the space. The between, another voice answered, smoother and colder than glass. A place for those who don't belong anywhere. The between, the phrase sent shivers down my spine. Not because it was unfamiliar, but because it resonated deep within me. As if part of me had always known about this place, had always feared it. And then I saw her again. Evelyn, or rather, her reflection. She stood at the edge of the room, staring at me through the shimmering surface of what looked like liquid mercury. Her expression was unreadable, neither hostile nor sympathetic, just patient, waiting. They brought you here to finish what they started, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around us. To become what I became. What are you talking about? I demanded, my voice trembling. What did you become? Her lips curled into that same predatory smile. Their vessel, their anchor, a bridge between worlds. A chill ran through me. You mean you're trapped? You gave yourself to them, and now you're stuck here. She tilted her head, studying me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. Not exactly. I chose this, just like you will. No. I shook my head violently, backing away until my back hit the curved wall. I won't choose this. I didn't ask for any of it. That's where you're wrong. Her reflection stepped closer, her movements fluid and deliberate. You buried the watch, didn't you? You thought you could escape. But running only proves you're ready. They wouldn't have picked you otherwise. Picked me? For what? To be some kind of cosmic pawn. Anger surged through me, cutting through the fear for just a moment. I'm not your replacement. I'm not anyone's anything. Her smile widened, revealing those razor-sharp teeth again. Oh, but you are. Don't you see? That's why you look like me. Why you feel like me. You're already becoming me. My breath hitched as realization hit like a freight train. All those little changes, the hollows under my eyes, the delayed reflections, the whispers calling me Evelyn, they weren't random. They were symptoms, signs of transformation. Whatever force had claimed Evelyn wasn't done with her yet. And now, it wanted me to take her place. No, I whispered, clutching my head as if I could physically hold myself together. This isn't real. None of this is real. It's more real than anything you've ever known. Evelyn replied, her tone softening slightly, almost pitying. The world you think is yours. It's just a shadow, a construct built to keep you distracted while they prepare you. Prepare me for what? Before she could answer, the ground beneath me shifted. The walls began to spiral inward, faster and faster, until the entire room collapsed into a vortex of light and darkness. I fell forward, or maybe backward, and landed hard on cold, damp earth. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the forest. The mirror stood before me, its surface still shimmering unnaturally. But something was different. The cloaked figure was gone, replaced by a single word etched into the frame in jagged, uneven letters. Choice. My heart raced as I stared at it. Choice. What choice? Did I have a say in any of this? Or was this just another illusion, another trick to make me think I had control when I didn't? The whispers returned, softer now, almost coaxing. Step through, they urged. Become whole. But another voice joined them, one quieter, weaker, but unmistakably mine. Don't. It was the first time I'd heard my own voice since all this began. Clear and unbroken, untainted by fear or doubt. It gave me strength, enough to stand, to face the mirror without flinching. What happens if I refuse? I asked aloud, addressing no one and everyone at once. The forest went silent. Even the wind stopped moving. Then, slowly, the mirror's surface rippled, and Evelyn's reflection appeared once more. Her smile faltered, replaced by something darker. Hungrier. You can't refuse forever, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Eventually, you'll break. And when you do, we'll be waiting. With that, the mirror shattered. Thousands of shards exploded outward, each one reflecting a sliver of my terrified face before dissolving into nothingness. The forest faded along with it, leaving me standing alone in the attic of my grandmother's house. For a moment, everything seemed normal, quiet, safe. But then I noticed something on the floor, a small silver pocket watch, gleaming faintly in the dim light. Its hands began to move, ticking softly as if counting down to something inevitable. And behind me, in the shadows, a whisper. Tick-tock. The ticking was deafening. It filled the attic, drowning out every other sound. My breathing, the creak of the floorboards, even the blood pounding in my ears. Each second stretched longer than the last, as if time itself were unraveling around me. I didn't dare turn around. I couldn't face whatever lurked in those shadows whispering my name. Or was it her name? The pocket watch lay at my feet, its surface glinting innocently despite the chaos it had unleashed. Against every screaming instinct, I bent down and picked it up. The metal was ice cold against my palm, yet it burned like fire. The engravings on its surface shifted beneath my fingers, spiraling faster and faster until they blurred into a single, pulsating line. And then I heard it. Not a voice this time, but a laugh. Low, guttural, and utterly devoid of joy. It came from everywhere and nowhere, reverberating through the walls, the air, my very bones. My grip tightened on the watch as the laughter grew louder, more frenzied, until it felt like it would tear me apart. Do you hear them? Evelyn's voice cut through the cacophony, soft and mocking. She wasn't in front of me anymore. She was inside my head. They're laughing because they know you can't win. Win what? I spat, clutching the watch so hard that its edges dug into my skin. What game are we playing here? Her response was immediate, chillingly calm. Survival. Before I could process her words, the attic began to warp again. The wooden beams twisted upward, stretching toward an invisible sky. The floor beneath me cracked and splintered, revealing a void below, a swirling abyss of blackness dotted with pinpricks of light, like stars collapsing into themselves. I stumbled backward, trying to steady myself, but there was no solid ground left. Just the watch in my hand and the endless pull of the void. "They want you to jump," Evelyn whispered, her tone almost tender now. "It's easier that way. Let go. Become one of them." "No," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "I won't let them take me." "They already have," she replied, her voice breaking for the first time. For just a moment, she sounded human, vulnerable. "You've been there since the day you buried the watch. Since the day you tried to run." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Run. That's all I'd done since this nightmare began. Run from the whispers, the dreams, the mirror. But running hadn't saved me. It had only brought me closer to them, closer to becoming what Evelyn had become. A vessel, a bridge, a sacrifice. But why? Why me? What made me special enough to be chosen? Or was that the wrong question entirely? Maybe it wasn't about being special. Maybe it was about being expendable. As if answering my unspoken thoughts, the watch pulsed violently in my hand. The ticking stopped. Silence fell over the attic, or rather, the void where the attic used to be. In that silence, I heard something new, a heartbeat. Slow, rhythmic, and impossibly loud. My heartbeat, except it wasn't mine. It belonged to the thing inside the watch. Without thinking, I opened it. The lid snapped back with a metallic click, and the world imploded. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in a field. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the grass. Birds chirped in the distance. Everything seemed peaceful, serene, normal, too normal. I looked down at my hands. They weren't mine. Not exactly. My fingers were longer, thinner, tipped with nails that gleamed like polished steel. My skin shimmered faintly, translucent like frosted glass, like Evelyn's had been. "No," I whispered, stumbling backward. "This isn't real. This can't be happening." "It is," Evelyn said, appearing beside me. Except she wasn't a reflection anymore. She was solid, real, whole. "Welcome to the other side." "The other side of what?" I demanded, my voice cracking under the weight of despair. "What am I now?" She smiled, the same predatory smile I'd come to dread. But this time, there was no malice in it. Only pity. "You're their anchor, their bridge, just like me. But I'm not you," I screamed, my voice echoing across the empty field. "I'm still me. I'm still human," she finished, her smile fading. "No, you stopped being human the moment you picked up the watch." Her words struck me like a blade. I wanted to deny them, to scream and fight and claw my way back to the life I'd lost. But deep down, I knew she was right. The truth had been staring me in the face all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. And then I understood. This wasn't about choice. It never had been. From the moment I found the watch in the attic, I'd been moving along a path I couldn't escape. Every decision I'd made, burying the watch, returning to the attic, stepping into the mirror, had led me here. To this moment, to this fate. Evelyn reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was cold, but not unpleasant, comforting even. "You'll get used to it," she said softly. "Eventually, you'll forget what it felt like to be afraid." Forget? How could I ever forget? How could anyone forget the feeling of losing themselves piece by piece, becoming something else entirely? But as I stood there, staring at the horizon, I realized she was right. The fear was fading already, replaced by something colder, darker, something ancient. And as the whispers returned, gentler now, almost soothing, I knew I was no longer fighting them. I was listening.